It all seemed so hard to believe that a handful of ordinary-looking young men could seize 4 jetliners and turn them into deadly missiles. That so much destruction, so many deaths, could be the result of a sinister plot carried out by terrorists, hiding in plain sight.
There was smoke everywhere. People are jumping out the windows. Oh, they're jumping out the windows, I guess, because they're trying to save themselves. I don't know.
The destruction so overwhelming, it almost defied logic. Not surprising, then, suggestions of a conspiracy. Did the government know about it? Did they do it themselves? A decade has passed since that terrible day. While the physical wounds are healing, those doubts, those questions about who was responsible, they linger.
You kind of wonder what kind of things are going on in the background that we don't know about.
You just look at the situation and you want to know, who benefited from it.
This whole place should be a memorial dedicated to the lives that was lost due to the tragedy. But as you can see, big business as usual, man. Like I said, powerful forces at work, my brother. Be very careful with where you stick your camera. Powerful forces at work, man.
Many people believe that these powerful forces are always at work.
Thus begins the last day of his life. He will live less than 4 hours from this moment.
We live in an age of suspicion, where there's doubt that a lone gunman ended this presidency.
No one will ever make me believe that Lee Harvey Oswald took any shot.
Doubt that a drunk driver was responsible for the death of a princess.
I don't think it was an accident, personally. I think that somebody had her killed.
Or that this movie star's life ended with a simple overdose. Most shocking and bewildering world events now have 2 versions of the truth. One follows the official story. The other follows a conspiracy theory that sinister and powerful forces, a new world order, may be at work behind the scenes. 1/3 of Americans think that their government hasn't told them the truth about what happened on 9/11. Those doubts are shared by many others around the world. The accusations about who was really responsible can be heard at the open wound that is Ground Zero. For Bob McIlvaine, that debate is deeply personal.
The suffering gets better, but the pain never goes away.
His son Bobby died in the North Tower. He's convinced that the World Trade Center towers were destroyed by explosives planted in the buildings, not by hijacked airplanes. He won't rest until he's uncovered the truth.
I try to find out exactly to the second what happened to Bobby, and of course, I'm going to get emotional. But if you've ever lost a child, you want to know how much pain he went through or she went through. Was it instantaneous? Was it 5 seconds?
Bob McIlvaine has put his grief to work, channeling his energy into examining the forensic evidence.
I've had so many first-hand reports that seconds before or immediately upon impact, the explosions in the basements took place. There's no question in my mind the United States was involved in it. So if you're going to say who, I don't care, blame Bush, blame Cheney. But the thing is, there was a massive cover-up on my son's murder. People, I want them to understand, this happens all the time. It's Machiavellian politics. And what that means is the ends justify the means. And the nation is always #1. They could care less about civilians, innocent civilians as victims. And that's been proven through history.
Todd was the joy of my life and the joy of our family.
Herb Awida was in the World Trade Center on September 11th, 2001. His 25-year-old son, Todd, worked above him in an office on the 105th floor.
I went down the stairs, terrible. Took me about an hour to get out. And I kept praying and crying and speaking to the fireman. I said, save my son, he's above us. I don't know what Todd was. I don't know if he ever knew that there was no way out. My prayer is that somehow he didn't suffer. But I'll go to my grave not knowing.
But unlike Bob McIlvaine, Herb Awida doesn't believe that the U.S. government would be involved in a plot to murder its own citizens.
I would say there's no evidence that anything destroyed those buildings but those planes. I think it's so irrational that it really doesn't deserve much more comment. I believe that Al-Qaeda, with Osama bin Laden as its head, planned to do this over a period of many years.
Stop the bullshit with the CIA, with this. It was bin Laden and nobody else.
And their agenda is to hopefully create division and to make people insecure and to frighten us so that we don't act in an appropriate way, to take away our freedoms, actually.
When there's a controlled demolition. So there's eyewitness reports of you, sir. I watched it on TV live.
In that way, the attack has succeeded. Even the families of 9/11 victims are a house divided over who planned and executed the 9/11 attacks.
The windows were still in.
They are poignant examples of these two solitudes, now so often at odds over the truth.
You tell me how a building. You tell me how my friends that
one solidly behind government and order.
These are facts that are available.
The other suspicious, seeking answers, unsatisfied with the official version of the facts. Conspiracy theorists like Alex Jones have been fueling those doubts, challenging the official story.
9/11 is an inside job!
Attracting many to the belief that the whole thing was an inside job.
We're live, ladies and gentlemen.
And he's got his own radio show to spread the word.
We're telling you the truth.
No matter how you look at 9/11, from any angle or any perspective, if you're truthful, you know that you're being lied to about the official story. There was no Islamic terrorist connection. The hijackers were clearly U.S. government assets who were set up as patsies, like Lee Harvey Oswald.
All right, here we go.
Alex Jones' program is carried on 60 stations around America and podcast over the internet. His take on world events is radically different from what we see in the mainstream media.
They've got federal programs for police to take blood without warrants at checkpoints on the highways.
The military-industrial complex killed John F. Kennedy in plain view. I can prove that there's a private banking cartel setting up a world government because they admit they are. No one's safe. Do you understand that? Pure evil is running wild everywhere at the highest level.
His message has struck a nerve. From a business park in Texas, Alex Jones is doing a brisk trade, marketing his alternate version of history and world events. The motto on his website? There is a war on for your mind.
Take action. Find out this stuff is real, and then decide what side of history you want to be on. You want to get in the ditch and lick the boots of the tyrants, or you want to get up on your hind legs and kick their butt. See you back live this Sunday, 4 to 6 p.m. Central.
Alex Jones is just one voice in a growing chorus of doubters, offering alternative explanations for world events. Explanations that offer shockingly clear answers, while the official stories may have questions and loose ends.
Conspiracy theories love a vacuum, so the fact that engineers and scientists couldn't answer every single question about how World Trade Center 7 collapsed meant, well, there was only one other conclusion. It must have been, you know, there must have been massive demolition charges in there.
For many, the certainty of the explanations offered by conspiracy believers is very attractive.
It looks like being certain even of something which is very terrible and very frightening may be psychologically preferable, at least to many people, than being in doubt, being uncertain. Because if you're uncertain, you're suspended. You don't know what stance to take.
That's what the conspiratorial mind does. It looks for a simple explanation, a nice, neat pattern with a little secret, powerful force behind it controlling things. That's what our brains do.
Some academics and journalists say we should think twice before we buy the conspiracy theorists' evidence.
Here's what's funny about the conspiracy theorists. They call themselves skeptical, but in fact, they are the least skeptical people you'll ever meet. They believe anything they read as long as they already agree with it.
Since 2005, Popular Mechanics magazine has been assigning teams of reporters to comb through the 9/11 details with the help of top scientists and experts.
You know, they're saying there's evidence it was a missile that hit the Pentagon, but they found the plane in the building. They tested the DNA of the passengers. They identified them. We talked to people who held pieces of the plane in their hands. We talked to people who saw the plane hit the building. So this whole notion like, well, there's a camera and it took a picture, but it's not clear, so it's probably not a plane. That's a perfectly fine debate, except in order to think that debate is meaningful, you have to ignore all this other evidence. And that's what the conspiracy theorists have gotten very good at. It isn't finding evidence, it's ignoring evidence.
In the search for the truth, the sifting over the evidence, Ground Zero has become a crucible, drawing visitors from around the globe. Some aren't sure what to believe.
I think there's only a few people in the world that actually know what was going on, but I don't know.
It's a weird thing that a building that high just falls down, you know?
Nothing has inspired those doubts, that skepticism, more than the internet, where anyone can be an expert and post an opinion, whether it's true or not. Critics say those opinions, passed from one hand to the next, can quickly seem like the truth, simply because they're repeated everywhere.
I happen to know that my approval ratings are still very high in the country of my birth.
The most powerful man in the free world was recently forced to produce his birth certificate to disprove a persistent conspiracy theory that he was born outside America and ineligible to hold office. And when the death of the most wanted man in the world was announced, within hours, conspiracy theorists were posting their doubts online. The U.S. government has been fighting fire with fire, hosting its own website. But changing minds isn't going to be easy.
I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow.
Recent history tells us that governments and leaders do conspire. And the truth is often hard to divine.
Have weapons of mass destruction. He's got them.
Conspiracies are real. We know that. Governments, we know, do things which are very horrible and which we don't want to think about. These theories, one reason they touch us is that they give us the sense that we may be looking behind the curtain. It's something that really, really matters for us.
David Livingston Smith researches human conflict and deception at the University of New England. He says to understand why conspiracy theories thrive, we need to study how humans behave.
Life is full of intimate conspiracies. A mother who reads her daughter's diary or notices something on Facebook and discusses it with her husband and what are they going to do about it. Children secretly discussing how they're going to manipulate their parents, how they're going to work as a team, and so on and so forth. So the principle itself, I think, holds in all areas of social life. If you doubt it, and if you perhaps foolishly believe that you're innocent of it, just look at literature and just look at the movies and just look at the plots of soap operas and so on, and they're all centered around this sort of thing. Coalitions, deceptions, conspiracies.
You can find more examples throughout history.
Some folks in the conspiracy community talk about government mind control, and I think it's humorous to note that one of the earliest versions of that had to do with rock music and the idea that there was a linkage between communism, hypnotism, and the Beatles. And that the rock and roll beat of the Beatles and other groups were destabilizing the mental patterns of youth to prepare the way for communist subversion and Soviet invasion.
3 centuries before the Beatles, a great fire swept through the city of London, igniting a conspiracy theory that quickly led to violence. Historians now believe the Great Fire of London started on Pudding Lane, in the kitchen of the royal baker. At the time, rumors that Catholic conspirators and foreigners had set fire to the city spread quickly in Protestant London.
They were looking for someone to blame, and in fact many of the residents ganged together and found anyone who was a foreigner and lynched them.
Whenever these sorts of things happen, when death becomes salient, when there is what seems to be a meaningless disaster, people look for cause. And they look for a cause in human agency, human or divine agency, actually, but in agency. Somebody is doing this. Somebody's got to be responsible.
But finding the truth is rarely easy. The search often made more complicated by human nature.
Several thousand enthusiastic Texans are on hand to give the President and Mrs. Kennedy a warm welcome.
It's hard to imagine a time when a U.S. president would take a slow ride down a city street in an open limousine.
The freeway was jam-packed with spectators waiting their chance to see the president.
On November 22nd, 1963, in Dallas, that changed forever.
Who has been hit? If anybody's been hit, but apparently something is wrong here. Something is terribly... President Kennedy has been assassinated. It's official now. The president is dead.
Any American old enough to remember can tell you exactly where they were that day.
I remember being in school and my teacher crying, Miss Bedzina, and we didn't know what was going on.
I was in elementary school, and I remember they just sent you all home. Nobody thought anything. Right. You just were let go. The world came to a stop.
It's at moments like this that conspiracy theories are born. Shocking events experienced when we're young can become what's known as a flashbulb memory.
We know that flashbulb memories are formed and become particularly memorable in early adulthood. In that period from 18, 20 years of age up till about 35. So an event that goes on when you were that age will stay with you longer. There's a suggestion that individuals who had those flashbulb memories for these events at those ages, there are higher levels of belief in conspiracy theories about those events.
Half a century after the Kennedy assassination, thousands still come to Dealey Plaza.
We found empty rifle holes, and it looked like the man had been there for some time.
To see the Texas School Book Depository and a window on the 6th floor where a loner named Lee Harvey Oswald allegedly pulled the trigger.
We have apprehended a suspect involved in the shooting at the Texas.
That window and the 6th floor of the book depository have been turned into a museum. The images and the cameras that captured every terrible moment on display. All of it a shrine to what might have been, a testament to the enduring power of this assassination story.
Since we opened on President's Day in 1989, we've had over 7 million visitors,
was only going to be temporary. And after everybody's curiosity was satisfied, they'd close it down after 3 or 4 years.
This is the basement floor of the Oswald has been shot. Lee Oswald.
For many, the shocking death of the prime suspect at the hands of a strip club owner named Jack Ruby, witnessed by millions on television, has always been just too much to swallow.
Oswald fell to the concrete in front of our eyes.
They just can't believe Oswald acted alone. Surely Jack Ruby was sent there to silence him.
There's a feeling that the public has been lied to by the United States government. And many sociologists and historians can point to the Kennedy assassination as the dividing line for when people lost faith in their government.
The official version of events has Lee Harvey Oswald acting alone in firing the fatal shot. But there have been persistent allegations that others may have been part of the plot to kill the president. Robert Groden is the dean of Dallas's Kennedy conspiracy theorists. He believes the fatal shot didn't come from Lee Harvey Oswald.
What you see in the Zapruder film and the others is the shot came from the front, hit the right temple, blew out the back of the president's head. You have to be foolish to disregard all of the evidence. It may be too late for justice in this case because we can't bring President Kennedy back, but we all deserve to know the whole truth.
I've long believed personally that there was more to it than Lee Harvey Oswald. I just can't prove it, and I don't know anyone who can. To settle the Kennedy assassination would require some new evidence, not something that has been known before but just misunderstood, but something absolutely new that is unequivocally correct when all sides agree. And I don't foresee that happening.
Down on Dallas's Dealey Plaza, there's no shortage of theories about who was behind the attack and how many shooters there were.
Definitely 2 shooters. Yeah.
So you're saying there was a shooter up on the overpass?
Yes, it was 2.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. How many shooters do you think there were?
Probably 3.
3 shooters. We got 2, 3, and 9.
Triangulated.
Michael Shermer is the founder of the Skeptics Society,
If there's a shooter right here with a rifle.
an organization of like-minded scientists and thinkers who are challenging conspiracy believers to prove their theories.
The shooter is right where
Right
this
here,
orange thing
right.
is. So he's just
That's
leaning
it.
over. Bam!
He says people accept the conspiracy theorist version of events because research shows human beings are pre-wired to believe what they're being told.
Evolutionary-wise, we're a social primate species, so we do pay attention to what others around us say. You know, we trust our fellow group members, and that when we hear a story, there's probably some value in the story. But we don't live in that world anymore. I heard this story, I saw it on the internet. You know, it's like, it must be true, and that's just our brains tricking us. So the uphill battle for us skeptics is that it's actually in science, it's just the opposite. Don't believe anything you hear until it's proven true.
Shermer says conspiracy theories are attractive because our brains are trained to seek out patterns in the information that flows all around us. And when we come to a conclusion, there's a reward.
What conspiracies do is they give us a little dopamine hit, like, ooh, I got the pattern, I figured it out, I know what's really going on here. The rub is which patterns are real and which are not. And our brains are not good at making that distinction.
Some of the Secret Service agents said shots came from the building.
Yeah.
Some of them said they came from the grassy knoll.
Shermer and other researchers say we're programmed to seek out and select information that supports our existing beliefs. It's called our confirmation bias.
So the belief comes first, and then the evidence to support it comes second. And this is true for all of us.
And there's another human trait that helps explain why so many people find conspiracy theories so believable.
We want the size of the event to have an equally large cause. So JFK, the leader of the free world, killed by A lone nut? A nobody? Come on, that just doesn't feel right.
What if it was nothing more than some disgruntled sharpshooter who could do that and take us down? I don't think any of us wants to believe we're that exposed. And I think from then on, you always live in a world where you are looking over your shoulder. It has changed it, and you come here because you're still looking for that answer.
Patrick Lehman has been studying that phenomenon. He gave one group of students a fictional news story to read, in which the leader of a country died in an assassin's attack. Other students read a story where the leader survived the attack. Those who read the story about the leader dying were more likely to believe that a conspiracy was involved.
The bigger the event, the more likely you are to think that a conspiracy explains it. Partly, it retains this sense that the universe, the world, is ordered, predictable, controllable. If we believe that big events are caused by sometimes random or accidental things, that can be quite unsettling.
Humans like to believe they have control over what happens to them. Events like the death of Diana upset that kind of wishful thinking.
A princess can die because there was a drunk driver. That destroys that sense of predictability. It really blows it apart.
Researchers are trying to discover who among us is most likely to believe conspiracy theories.
This is unbelievable. I can't believe this is happening.
The death of Diana is fertile ground for their work. British tours guide Michael Robinson witnessed the thousands who came to mourn at Kensington Palace, Diana's home.
You could not see a blade of grass here. Everything was covered in flowers. All of the gates, right the way down to the roadway, virtually as far as you could see, was just a sea of flowers.
For some, that grief quickly turned to anger, doubt, and suspicion. Polls have shown that 1/3 of the British people believe that Diana's death was no accident.
One of the questions I'm asked as a tour guide, probably more than any other question, is do I believe that it was a conspiracy or that it was just an unfortunate accident? I don't have an answer any more than anyone else does.
Security cameras in Paris's Ritz Hotel captured the last minutes of Diana's life. With the paparazzi in hot pursuit, her speeding limousine left the hotel and descended into the Alma Tunnel, where it crashed. Her boyfriend, Dodi Al-Fayed, and the driver were killed on impact. Diana died later, in hospital. John McNamara is a retired Scotland Yard police investigator. At the time, he was head of security, working for Mohammed Al-Fayed, Dodi's father.
After we buried Dodi, Mohammed turned to me and said, "Do you know, they've done it exactly like she said. They've murdered her." And I couldn't believe what he was telling me. Quite honestly, I still believe then this was a tragic road accident. Of course, later on, Mohammed enlarged on this, and he was telling the world of the conversation he'd had with Diana, where she told him that Prince Charles, her husband, planned to have her killed in a staged car accident.
Those allegations rocked a grieving nation. Mohammed Al-Fayed, one of Britain's wealthiest men, saw conspiracy everywhere.
I'm not talking to you because you're a bloody idiot, you're part of the establishment, and you're a journalist, you work for MI6, you idiot.
He accused Britain's security service and the royal family of plotting Diana's death. Martin Gregory is a UK journalist who covered the story.
The conspiracies really took off in February 1998, where Mohammed Al-Fayed went to the Daily Mirror and they ran a story saying big black type, it was no accident. If it wasn't an accident, what was it? It was a conspiracy. And we went then on another 10 years of fantasy.
Under pressure, the British government launched an inquiry, spending millions on an inquest that concluded that Diana died in a tragic accident, and that Henri Paul, the driver, was drunk at the wheel, and that the paparazzi, who relentlessly pursued Diana, were a factor in the crash.
But her brother Charles said of her name, Diana means the hunted. And to a certain extent, that's right, she was hunted until the moment she died.
The inquest failed to produce any credible evidence that the royal family was part of a plot to murder the princess.
I think it was a good experience to go through, and a necessary experience for the British people, for the people of the world really, to find out that no, she wasn't killed, no, she wasn't murdered. She died in an accident that could and should have been prevented.
But a lot of the general public, then and now, refused to believe those findings. Martin Gregory says while Mohammed Al-Fayed's allegations of a conspiracy were being dismissed in court, the reaction to his testimony was quite different in the public gallery.
Mohammed Fayed would accuse everybody from the Duke of Edinburgh to Tony Blair, everybody being involved in killing his son and Diana. And it went down like the proverbial lead balloon in the court. But then I went outside. The audience there, the public, were cheering every time. Camilla's a crocodile. Camilla, you know, the new wife of Prince Charles. And the public were really up for it. It was like a football match.
It looks like what you believe has a lot to do with who you are and where you've come from.
I just don't trust the government because they're not helping my people. They're not helping. It's their own interest at the moment.
Well, I think anything's possible. There's something going on there. about how it happened. Yeah.
I think loads of things hidden, to be honest. As to what's been hidden, I wouldn't know. But there are so many hidden aspects as to what really happened.
I think it was just a tragic accident. To me, it's a tragic accident. Hardly anything different from that. It just seems quite incredible. Nobody would do that.
Researchers have found that those from ethnic minorities, those who feel disconnected from mainstream politics, and low-income earners are more likely to be conspiracy believers.
And that's something that surprised us, really quite a striking relationship between the amount you earn and the likelihood that you're going to believe in these theories.
When we think we found a secret pattern, you know, especially inside information that nobody else has, that empowers you. It's like, we're on to you guys. We know what's really going on here. You have nothing on me, buddy, because I know what's going on. And it makes you feel good. It lifts you up.
How susceptible are you to conspiracy theories? Take this test and see. Decide whether you agree or disagree with the following statements. The government isn't very concerned about the needs of people like me. I have trouble doing what I want to do in the world today. We seem to live in a pretty irrational and disordered world. I don't trust that my closest friends will tell me the truth. If you strongly agreed with these statements, you're a potential conspiracy believer. Research is showing that people who don't trust others and those who conspire against friends and co-workers are more likely to be believers. But it's also true that limited exposure to conspiracy theories can make you a more skeptical person.
What really surprised me is that while people do deny the effect that conspiracy theories have on their attitudes, they are nevertheless quite influenced by them.
Karen Douglas's research shows that any exposure to those theories subtly affects their thinking. And often, they have no idea that their beliefs may be changing.
So they're unaware of the effect that conspiracy theories are having on their attitudes about specific world events.
Researchers are also searching for the reasons why some people are drawn to conspiracy beliefs. They say it can have a lot to do with our attitudes about strangers from other places. Out in the New Mexico desert, on the edge of the city of Roswell, is where old jetliners come to die. Their bones picked over and recycled and sold for scrap. And then there are the whispers of the otherworldly wreckage of a strange airship and corpses whisked away in the nighttime. The story passed from one generation to the next.
We get a lot of tourist guys that come in here and take pictures. They want to know about the hangar, you know, if it's true or not. It's Hangar 84, that's where they did the autopsy on the alien, you know.
Now a morgue for old airplane parts, some say Hangar 84 was a different kind of morgue in 1947. They say it's the place where the U.S. military brought the bodies of visitors from outer space after the discovery of a mysterious debris site out in the desert. The military issued a press release suggesting that it was the remains of a flying disc. The news flashed around the world. 2 days later, the military changed its story, saying that the debris was actually a high-altitude weather balloon. But rumors persist about alien corpses and a cover-up. One of the aliens is said to have been found alive. And in this workshop, autopsies were supposedly performed on the less fortunate victims of the crash. In 1995, this film was released, supposedly showing an autopsy being conducted on one of the aliens. All of it fueling the conspiracy stories and provoking fear and suspicion about other beings from other places.
Roswell happened. I knew a lot of the people that were involved. I grew up here.
Julie Schuster is executive director of the Roswell UFO Museum and Research Center. It was her father, a U.S. Air Force lieutenant, who issued the original flying disc press release.
I told people all along my daddy didn't lie. If he said it happened, it happened.
Roswell conspiracy believers say the U.S. military spirited away the debris and the alien corpses, perhaps to keep the technology out of the hands of its enemies. One thing is certain: the Roswell conspiracy story is good for business.
On average now, the museum hosts about 153,000 people a year from across the world.
Sure, there's got to be somebody out there trying to find us, right?
You know, you leave here wondering, was it real? Wasn't it real?
In fact, most people believe there's life on other planets. Many think they've already paid us a visit.
The space aliens are the perfect metaphor for the other. They come here, we don't know what they have in store for us. They maybe have great power. They probe us in terrible places. And it's every primordial fear is wrapped up in the idea of the aliens.
One conspiracy theory suggests that the U.S. government removed those alien corpses and the wreckage from Roswell, New Mexico, and later hid them out here in a remote corner of the Nevada desert. Every year, hundreds of people now make the long trek down what's become known as the extraterrestrial highway. They're in search of the truth. They want to know what's really going on out in the desert.
What goes on there now, we can only speculate, but it's got to be big, it's got to be super secret and super interesting.
Georg Arnu is a software developer who lives and works in Las Vegas. But whenever he gets the chance, he drives 3 hours to his trailer in Rachel, Nevada. The attraction? Area 51. a top-secret military testing facility. Security is tight. Armed guards patrol the access roads in this forbidding moonscape. Georg Arnim and other volunteers monitor the site from outside the wire.
We, as the American public, should be watching what is going on at Area 51. It is good that we kind of keep an eye on what's going on there and keep them honest.
Area 51 has become the focus for some conspiracy theorists, who say that the moon landing was faked.
Eagle, we got you now. It's looking good, over.
That the one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind moment
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
was actually filmed somewhere here in the desert, then shown on TV to an unsuspecting public.
A secret place like Area 51, of course, attracts all kinds of rumors and stories, because you can't just walk into Area 51 and prove or disprove it. So, I mean, I can claim anything I want. I can claim they are holding JFK in there. Who can disprove it?
The closest town to Area 51 is Rachel. And that makes it a magnet for UFO believers, conspiracy theorists, and the just plain curious.
I don't know, it just sounded fun and something unique.
Today, it's the honeymoon destination for Leif and Catherine from Sandy Springs, Georgia.
We got married Saturday night, just like 30 hours ago, and decided to come to Area 51 together.
It is very isolated, that's for sure.
Last night we wore little tinfoil hats and sat outside and kind of looked at the stars, hoping to see something. Nothing. It was too cold.
Not being able to see the UFOs or the aliens doesn't dissuade the believers, according to Michael Shermer. He's challenged UFO conspiracists to produce the evidence.
When I say, well, where's the bodies? Where's the spacecraft? Where's your evidence for this? Oh, no, they don't want us to see this. That's how we know it's true. They've hidden it away. Well, lo and behold, I saw this argument used by the Bush administration when they made the case for invading Iraq with the weapons of mass destruction. In we go. No weapons of mass destruction. Where are they? We know that they're there because they moved them. That's how we know. They moved them away because they knew we were coming, and therefore that's how we know they had them. Like, wait a minute, what? No. If you make a positive claim, you have to have positive evidence in support of it, not negative evidence that the evidence is there but hidden.
The more I researched it, the more I became aware that there is really no such thing as UFOs at Area 51. There never have been.
Jorg believes the UFO sightings here are actually military exercises. He also thinks that the military has been putting on light shows to encourage those sightings and the conspiracy theories.
A lot of these rumors, I think, are very convenient for security forces at Area 51 to keep what is really going on there from the public's attention.
For many people, it's easy to imagine that there's much more hidden out here in the desert. Easy to imagine that some of the other conspiracy stories could be true. That aliens are already living among us.
I've also heard conspiracy theories that aliens have always been here, that we are the genetic offspring of aliens, and I've heard theories that aliens are future humans coming back from the future to the past.
One theory suggests that alien visitors have given their technology to the American government in exchange for the right to abduct U.S. citizens for science experiments. And some theorists believe that the Queen and other world leaders are actually reptiles from another planet.
Really? They have either come from another star system or they have been living in tunnels and caverns under the earth and have emerged up to the surface and are slowly moving to take over the world.
They look like us, but apparently these lizards are really running the show. Experts warn that for some conspiracy believers, That kind of thinking betrays a troubling fear of newcomers and strangers.
As humorous as that as a belief system can be, it also helps prepare us to think about the stranger, the other, the immigrant, the marginalized person, the minority religious or ethnic group as being the other, the stranger, and the alien.
And in the wrong hands, that kind of fear presents a real danger.
In an unhealthy society, conspiracy thinking becomes a mass movement based on fear, anxiety, and anger, and it ends up targeting scapegoats.
When you get these two things going on, this level of fear and this powerful belief that these others are not quite human beings, these dangerous others, then it's really all set up for bloodshed.
In a world where sinister plots and conspiracies can be true, how do we distinguish between a genuine threat and what's just dangerous paranoia?
I discovered a bunch of bloodthirsty scum coming after innocent people, and I've been fighting them for 13 years, and I'll never stop while I'm drawing breath!
In the battle between Alex Jones and the establishment,
Here we go, guys!
one thing is certain.
They need to know that I'm not their slave. They need to know I'm committed 100%, and I'm never going to back down. And that spirit of liberty, that spirit of 1776, it is the answer to the spirit of 1984.
These are worldviews that are so strongly implanted, in which those who believe in them are so heavily invested that it becomes virtually impossible to sway them. They see themselves as part of the forces of virtue, and therefore anyone who challenges them must, by definition, be consorting with the enemy.
Those who challenge the conspiracy theorists often find themselves under fire.
If anyone gets in their way or disagrees with them, they're immediately attacked. And in fact, many of the experts that we interviewed then themselves became subjects of all kinds of wild claims and attacks.
What happens quite often is people who contest a conspiracy theory will be attacked, first of all, for being ignorant and not thinking about these things and being mistaken, and then ultimately the classic trick is to say that they're part of the conspiracy themselves. So yes, I've been accused of that as well, of being in the pay of various governments. I'm not. I've never seen any money. It would be nice to have more money, but as an academic you don't earn that much.
Sometimes so much is at stake, so much has been lost. The idea that you might be wrong is unthinkable.
Can you imagine that Princess Diana told him this was going to happen, and it did in fact happen the way she said, and he lost his son as a result of it? Can you imagine he would ever leave it alone? No.
Patrick Lehman says hardcore believers find ways of integrating new and even contradictory information into their existing beliefs.
Some conspiracies are a little bit like viruses that mutate to change in light of different bits of evidence. You stick with the original conspiracy, you're sure that's true, and you adapt everything to fit with that.
So in the face of such unshakable beliefs, how do you uncover the truth?
I guess my advice is to start off being skeptical. Just assume that people's claims are not true until proven otherwise.
Case in point. How likely is it that someone could put bombs in the World Trade Center and then make it look like those airplanes were responsible for the destruction of the towers, and then convince the hundreds involved in the plot to keep that secret?
The grander conspiracy theory, the more elements that have to be involved, the more people, the less likely it is to be true. Simply for two reasons. One, people are incompetent, and it's hard for them to pull things off. And two, people can't keep their mouth shut, and we eventually find out about it.
I'm worried about the corrosive effect these theories have on trust, on social functioning. it's important to have criticism, it's important to have a wide range of different views and perspectives in society. It's right to hold institutions and governments to account, but it's not right to tar them all with the same brush, to assume that everyone's up to no good. It's just not the way the world is.
I am the people, so if I come out and point out corruption and lies and things I don't agree with, that's not anti-government. I am the government.
Chip Burley warns that some conspiracy theorists threaten democracy because in their worldview, mainstream politicians are just part of the conspiracy.
I am the republic.
Democracy depends on informed consent, and by informed consent we mean a whole set of things. Informed means based on fact, not rumor and gossip. Consent means people go through a process of sometimes angry confrontation and leading to dialogue, leading to compromise. But with a conspiracy theory, why would you compromise with evil plotters? Why would you compromise with agents of Satan? Why would you compromise with the secret Illuminati or the Jewish bankers? Because they're out to get us. So the mere fact of compromise itself becomes intolerable in that construct.
In the age of suspicion, in a world where human beings are born to conspire, David Livingston Smith says we need to reason and think critically when others are trying to persuade us to believe their version of the truth.
Now, it's only through being able to reason that we have any hope of counteracting this powerful emotional appeal and preventing ourselves from sliding into barbarity, as has happened so many times in history. Conspiracy theories are not going to go away. Irrational conspiracy theories are not going to go away. And they're never going to cease having an emotional appeal to us.